Lights, camera, action!
Hi Saurav, welcome to the art room. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Sugandah, to be a part of this podcast.
Have you been following the Ambani wedding?
Oh, yes, of course. Who will not? I mean, it's been going on for like a long, long time, all the pre wedding and everything. But yeah, it's always interesting to kind of see what they're doing, what everyone's wearing.
Who's coming?
Exactly. So,
And there's
yeah.
more to come in London apparently.
Yes, apparently they're doing something now in London after having done something in Italy earlier. So, like a post wedding thing.
Only
Yeah.
if we had our weddings like this, it would be.
Of course, of
And
course.
something that was not to miss was Radhika Merchant's hand-painted lehenga by Jayashree
Hmm.
Burman.
Hmm.
That was
That
a
was
beautiful
amazing. Yeah,
addition.
yeah, yeah. It was really great, and it kind of goes on to show how patronage of the arts is important.
Yeah.
An artist, if they get a platform like this, it really makes a difference because now, in a way, Jessie Berman, I mean, she didn't really need it.
Hmm.
She already is very well known as an established artist. But now, even people who are possibly not into art at all would know that, okay, there is someone as an artist named Jessie Berman who painted, the dress that Radhika wore and everything. So they have some sort of an interest or an alleyway going towards the art in one way or the other. So that makes a lot of difference, of course.
And someone like Radhika Merchant wearing it on such an important day of her life, it adds
Exactly.
so much more value to art to and someone like her supporting the arts, so it
Hmm.
it really contributes to for us.
It does.
So Saurabh, I want to take you on a personal journey. You started off as a chartered accountant and then moved into India Art Fair as the exhibitor relationship manager there. How has your love from numbers gone into love of from into the love of canvases?
Um, I would say, I mean, there was never a love for spreadsheets. There's always a love for canvases. So it wasn't a journey from like spreadsheets to canvases.
Huh.
It was always both of them together in a
Okay.
way where one was getting, I would say, more attention. The other may not have been getting a little more attention. Uh, but basically, I mean, I felt very comfortable with numbers. I found it really easy to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had some sort of an inclination, some sort of an love with art and creativity, and I've always been like, how can I be a part of it? How can I make it something as a career? That always was a question in my head,
Hmm.
and when I had to actually make a choice in terms of what I have to study to be able to
Hmm.
make a career, I actually looked around and didn't find much in terms of options within
Hmm.
the arts field, at least in India at that point in time.
Okay.
So either you could have been an artist, which I was clear I wasn't, uh, or you could have been, let's say, working in a museum as a
Hmm.
government employee, which again was a bit too boring for me, I guess.
Hmm.
Or you could be into academia, which I felt was like a lot of research and a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, let's just stick with numbers for the time being, and that's how I kind of went into chartered accountancy, did my CA. And while I was doing all of that, I made sure that I still have some touch with art in some way or the other.
Okay.
Be it, let's say, leading the team who made the mural in my college at the DCAC, or possibly leading the social support groups which work with underprivileged children while I was back in college. And we kind of did workshops with children on art and things like that. So that element of art was
Hmm.
always there, even though
Hmm.
I may be focusing more on, let's say, my finance and economics that I was studying.
Hmm.
And then I started also working in finance and audit for a few years. I think a couple of years I worked in that field with like chartered accountants and firms like that. And after that, there came a point where I had the option of like that time period was getting over. So I had the option of then moving on to something else. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, now since I have this option, let me see at this point, is there something within the arts that I can kind of do? And that's when I
Hmm.
got this opportunity to represent Motherland magazine
Okay.
at India Art Fair. I
Okay.
think that happened for 2 editions. It
Okay.
wasn't like a full-time role. It was more like a representative of the magazine at the fair while the fair was on. And I
Hmm.
did that for 2 years.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
right after that, I got the opportunity to be at the fair. as part of the main team of the fair, and I was like, okay, I'm not letting it go. I mean, at least for once, I mean, for 1 year or 2 years, I'm going to definitely give it a try and see how it is, and whether I'm able to kind of bring those two elements together. And it was within the exhibitor relations team at that point in time also. And since then, I've not looked back. I mean, this role is something where I also have to kind of look after part of finance kind of a thing, because of course, I mean, being a commercial fair, we're working with galleries and other organizations who participate at the fair, and there are commercial transactions that are part of it, of course. And that element, I feel, spotlights and highlights and makes use of my finance and economics background a little bit. So I'm like, okay, my degree didn't go waste.
I put it to use somewhere.
Exactly. So that's been my journey, and I would say I would not change any part of it. If anyone asked me that, oh, would you change anything about it, or would you want to have studied art only, since the beginning, I would say no. I mean, that journey has been the reason why I'm here where I am, and I'm liking it.
And ever since you've been a part of the exhibitor relationships team at India Art Fair, you have become like the on-ground representative. You have a relationship with every gallery, every artist. Does it get challenging to maintain this position sometimes?
Not really challenging. Of course, there are moments when you think as to, how do I manage these conflicting ideas or conflicting mandates, that becomes a bit of a thing. But otherwise, I would say, having worked with a lot of galleries over the past few years, you do build up a relationship which is also a bit, I mean, it's of course formal and work based, but then there's also an element of, personal side to it that develops over a few years. If you're there, contacting each other for such a long time, you're working together for such a long time, then of course that rapport builds up. And that, I would say, helps a lot in terms of managing things on ground, because then on ground, on site at the fair, all of us, be it gallery A, be it gallery B, gallery C, or the fair team, we're all working together to make sure that the fair is up and running and is a smooth experience for everyone.
Right.
And everyone pitches in for it, of course, So I wouldn't call it challenging at all. No. The only problem that turns up at times would be when possibly, a gallery can't participate at the fair. And that, of course, you feel sad that, oh, for whatever reason, we wanted the gallery to be at the fair. I have a rapport with the gallery person, but it just couldn't happen. And then you feel, okay, probably next year.
Yeah. Now, India Art Fair, be it rail, hail, COVID, heat wave, you guys find a way to come back bigger, better, bolder every year.
Yeah.
What is going on behind the scenes? What does it take to plan such a large scale event, and then in an occasion like this, when suddenly everything seems to be going up, you always manage to make it a roaring success?
I would say there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and that's what a lot of people don't get to see, not just for the fair, not just in the context of the fair, but any event or exhibition or anything of that sort that's happening. The behind the scenes situation tends to be much more important than what you're seeing in front. I mean, just take Ambani wedding. I mean, they've done it for like things going on for like so many months. And there are, of course, so many people who are involved in making sure behind the scenes that everything is going perfectly fine. The decor, managing the guests, the food, you name it, and that thing is being looked after by someone. So the same thing happens at the fair also, that there are multiple elements that need to be looked into throughout the year. I mean, it's a 4-day event, but it's not like a 4-day planning that goes behind it. It's literally an entire year. It has a proper cycle and a proper process to it. Each department, be it, let's say, the exhibitor team, be it the VIP team, be it the sponsorship or the partnerships team, they all have their set processes that start right after, I would say, one edition is over. So if, let's say, for example, the 2024 edition got over, we open applications for galleries at a certain point in time. That process continues. VIPs and collectors are being reached out at a certain point in time by the VIP team, and there's a lot of conversation that is happening, telling them about the fair, inviting them to come to the fair. A lot of conversations regarding sponsorship, partnership. So all of that happens throughout the year. It's never a point where, you just wake up one fine day 1 month before the fair and everything falls into place. There's a
Yeah.
lot of effort that goes. And also during that process, it's how all of these teams kind of come together and bring all of it together to focus on this goal of building up the fair, and how that also kind of reflects on site, on ground, when it's the fair team, of course, but then there are also exhibitors, galleries who are participating in the fair. There are partners who are supporting the fair in different capacities. There are different other vendors who are supporting the production and helping us on that part. And how all of these different parts of the machine come together and work together in tandem to make sure that the fair turns out to be really good and works for everyone.
Right.
Be it, I mean, this year's situation when it was like raining like crazy, it was
Yeah.
literally pouring, yet when the fair had to open up, it was perfectly fine because everyone worked together towards that goal single-mindedly, focusing on the fact that, okay, whatever has happened, let's move ahead and make sure the next day is brighter, better, interesting for everyone, and is a good
Yeah.
experience. So
Yeah.
that goes on, and that support from all of these teams, from all of these parties, from all of these people who are invested in the fair makes a lot of difference, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, something that really set us back was COVID-19. And over time, I think the way art was consumed and received and viewed changed during this entire time. Do you think that COVID was also something that shifted the fair dates? Now, do you think that the market has changed ever since COVID has, now that we've gotten through that time, has the market changed, evolved? What has happened in this whole time?
So, I mean, of course, a major event like that does have an impact on every aspect of everyone's life. And so was the case with the art market also. It was deeply impacted. Everyone had to kind of, I mean, this was a very popular word back in those days, pivot. Everyone had to kind of pivot towards something else, some other way of doing things, but continuing with whatever they were doing. So things moved online, digital became really important. And I think one of the most important impact from that time period was this, that at least in India, at least in South Asia, the arts ecosystem started taking digital things seriously, be it a digital exhibition, digital viewing, or be it just making sure that your digital archives are up to date. Galleries in India became much more conscious of their digital presence through their websites. They kind of made sure that their websites were up to date, their exhibitions were archived properly, their artists' information, their bios, their works were available on their website. So basically, if someone is not able to come physically to a gallery, then at least digitally they can, experience it, interact with the galleries, and do all of that. And that happened not just with the galleries, but also with a lot of arts institutions in India, which moved online, or if they had like an online presence already as a website, they made sure that it was up to date. It was like it had the current information of what the institution is doing, what are the artists that the institution is working with, what are its programs that it's doing, if not physically, but like at least online, on screen, on Zoom or other platforms. So that part, I would say, is something that people started appreciating as very useful. Whereas initially, before COVID, I remember there were galleries and art institutions in India, at least, whose programming would be really, really strong, but the websites would be utter like of no use because it wasn't updated at all. So that, I think, is a one good change. And the other similar to this was the importance of social media, specifically Instagram and Facebook, I would say, because Facebook, I mean, less, but more of Instagram, honestly, because it's much more of a visual medium, and for the visual arts, that works really well. So that also became a lot more useful, a lot more important, and people started appreciating what all you could do on that platform and via that platform. Be it those live talks that people do, be it like just promoting an exhibition and reaching out to your audiences, or just doing like a sale of artworks by different artists. There were peer support groups created by artists like Archie in India, for example, that were purely initially Instagram based. Eventually they had a website and everything possibly, but it just started from that as a platform. So that I would say is one major impact that COVID had on at least the Indian art ecosystem, which made them a lot more appreciative of these digital side of things. The other, of course, that has happened now over the course of the past 3-4 years is that there was, of course, a lull in terms of sales activity during that time, but that is now history, because
Yeah.
now the Indian art ecosystem is amazing. It's booming. The market is like going crazy. There's a lot of disposable income with people, so of course there's a lot more renewed interest. In the last, I think, 1.5 year, we've had like 4 or 5 Indian artists who've set their auction records in crores.
Yes.
So I mean, it just goes on to show that it's the ecosystem in itself is growing a lot. There are a lot more. I mean, there are 2 major convention centers, or in a way cultural centers. One, NMACC, that has opened up recently.
Yeah.
The other, the KNMA Museum, would be opening up in a couple of years, like much larger space that has been announced. So there is institution building that's happening. There is a lot of growth in the market, because there's a lot of interest in art as an investment opportunity, as well as something that you buy because you like it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot happening, and the market is, of course, going upwards. And that recovery has been very quick, partly, I would say, also because the market here was very well connected, even during the times of COVID, because of a lot of personal relationships. Like a lot of galleries, for example, had a lot of connections with their clients, which were not based on the fact that, okay, I'm doing a show, you come and see and you kind of buy something. No, there was that open communication that also continued during COVID, helped a lot to ensure that those relationships continue.
Right.
And once that lull period was over, once that uncertainty was out, and you were sure that, okay, now things are getting better, that relationship grew much strongly, because you had kind of traveled together during that uncertain period of time. So that worked a lot, and that kind of helped move the industry to recovery a lot, I would say.
And I think people also became more and more comfortable buying over WhatsApp, buying online. That this was one major shift that we saw, which actually helps now to reach out to audiences and artists across the globe. This really opened up a whole new channel for galleries and artists as well. Now, we spoke about KNMA, and KNMA just did a large show on digital art and the importance and the growth of digital art, and how it's becoming so much more important in the art scene. How has the AI and arts landscape evolved in your time, as you have seen throughout the years?
I would say with digital, there's always been some sort of an interest in it, even before COVID made it quite a thing. But now, of course, there's a lot more understanding of what digital art is. Specifically things like NFT, crypto related, things. And also the fact that there's always been interest in, let's say, digital works, for example, moving images, animations, and projections. Things like that have always had a lot of interest from the audiences. But now there's a growing understanding and a growing appreciation of how virtual reality works, how augmented reality works, how technology can enhance your experience of viewing an artwork or experiencing an artwork in different ways, and does enhance your different senses. It's not just only visual now. There's a lot of other sensory elements at times that are involved in it, and that has kind of expanded specifically after COVID. One thing also that has happened with digital art is that there's a lot of support for it. There's a lot of institutions, or a lot of galleries that are taking it seriously, that has happened over the past few years. So for example, I mean, at the fair, at India Art Fair, to give you an example, of the past 2 editions, we worked with Today at Apple for our digital artist in residency program, where we worked with artists who created digital art projects, and those were displayed at the fair. And this goes on to show that people are, and those projects at the fair were immensely popular. So it goes on to show that there's a lot of interest in these new mediums, in these new media of experimenting with art. How it is translating itself into the market side of things is still a little, I would say, not that great. because of course with digital art, a host of issues come into picture as well when you're buying it, when the
Right.
commerce gets attached to it, as to what exactly is it are you getting. Is it just a film on a pen drive? Is it, the way it is presented? What exactly is it that you're getting? Can it be replicated? Are there multiple copies of it? Who has the right over it? Who can display it? How you can display it? So all of those things become very complicated in a digital, for a digital artwork. So, and that's one of the reasons why I think the market side of things has not picked up as much as the other side, which is more about experiencing art,
Yeah.
has become more popular. And I think the only way forward for that would be to have a lot more clarity on how a digital artwork is being made a part of a transaction, and what is it? What is a digital artwork that is being made part of a transaction? That clarity has to come from parties who are involved in that transaction, be it a gallery or an artist, as well as the buyer or the collector, that okay, this is what we are buying, these are the rights that the buyer gets, these are the rights that the artist keeps with themselves or doesn't keep with themselves. And unless and until that clarity comes into picture, I don't think so there will be much more expansion in terms of the market for digital art. However, there's one aspect of it which is a lot related to digital art, which is much more affordable and thus a little lucrative, a little exciting for audiences who are looking for much more economical options of art. So that, of course, is one side of things that's always been there and is still there. But to be able to grow further out of it, some sort of institutionalization, some sort of clarity in terms of that transaction, the legality of it, all of that needs to come into picture and become much more available as knowledge
Right.
to both the parties involved for it to be able to kind of expand further, I feel. Yeah.
And any particular digital artwork that really stuck with you, that you really enjoyed being a part of and engaging with?
Interestingly, there was one video projection by an artist from the US at the India Art Fair in 2024, and it was supported by LACMA.
Okay.
I'm forgetting the artist's name, but it was basically talking about climate change, pollution, fossil fuels, and how all of that is impacting our environment, ecology, how capitalism is affecting all of these things. I mean, it was an artist's take on all of those concepts and ideas, and it was displayed as a large video at the fair, and it was quite massive, impactful, and it held your attention. And I think that is one last digital work that I still remember has ingrained in my memory in a way. Yeah.
And when we speak about digital works, do you think this makes the market more accessible for a younger audience? Say the Gen Z and the millennials who are now experiencing a big shift of wealth into their hands. Do you think they are more open and more comfortable buying digital artworks, or are they still going to be going in for more of the traditional artworks?
No, I would agree with you that yes, I mean, the younger audiences are much more experimental. They're much more open to trying new forms of art, be it as an experience, be it as an immersive space, be it as a digital artwork, be it a digital projection or something digital on the screen. They are, of course, much more open to the idea because, of course, if you look at it, that is probably the first generation of people who started working with internet and technology.
Right.
The generation before that, they saw all of that coming, but they had been working with the older technology, a lot more analog things way before in time. So I think that has made a lot of difference. And then these audiences, what happened with COVID also was that fact that, as I mentioned, that galleries went online, their websites became much more informative, much more archival as well. And thus the galleries became a little more accessible to these audiences as well. So they didn't have to kind of walk into a gallery space to be able to buy an artwork. They could go off to the gallery website, see what they like, place a request with the gallery or get in touch with the gallery, and then take the conversation forward.
Yeah.
So it kind of made that process of investing in art and being able to buy art a lot more easier, and thus that element of interest has expanded and increased within the younger audiences as well. And of course, they are much more interested in digital. They're much more experimental. They look out for works that are based on videos, on projections, on AR and virtual reality. NFTs became quite popular after COVID. And also, I mean, I remember, I think a couple of years ago, or probably before COVID, I don't remember correctly, but now there are things called frame TVs. So
Yes.
you basically have like a television, and when you're not watching it, it has a beautiful frame also around it. So when you're not watching something in television, you put like an image or an artwork
And
image on
it's
it, and
got
it
your
looks
digital art running on it.
exactly. And it looks literally like, either a painting or like a digital artwork that's like, hanging on your wall. So,
Yeah, it
so
is an interesting concept
yeah.
that came out. And do you think the millennials and the new audience that is buying, this is a little less daunting experience for them to buy online, because here they're not directly reaching out to a gallery, because sometimes reaching out to a gallery at the fair or asking for a price can be a little bit intimidating for them?
Yeah, I mean, of course, as I said, doing it on website is much more easier, because for a lot of people, then there's no like personal interaction involved till the point you want it or till the point you need it.
Yeah.
Which is when you reach out to the gallery through email, through phone numbers on website, or probably on Instagram or wherever. So that, and also you don't have to physically go to a space. Like you don't have to kind of step out of your home and hail a cab or like drive down to a gallery and then see the artwork. You have it at the click of a button, either on your laptop or on your phone, on Instagram. And that, of course, makes it a lot more easier for you to be able to buy it or consider buying an artwork. And that, of course, increases the scope of possibilities that are possible in terms of expanding the market that is interested, the audience base that is interested in collecting art. Earlier, this section of audience may have not gone to a gallery, and thus not have bought an artwork at all, because they're like, oh, I don't feel like going. It's a bit, as you said, intimidating, which ideally shouldn't be the case to go into a gallery space. But now they can still do it online, and then once they're more comfortable with that particular gallery, they can walk into their space if it's in their own city.
Yeah.
So that digitization has, of course, yes, helped a lot in making things easier. And in terms of intimidation, I would say that a lot of that feeling also has to be because of the fact possibly that galleries tend to be like these white cube spaces that are like so pristine, clean, clear, and it's like, oh, it's only like rich people who go there because an artwork would be worth 1 crore. What am I going to do there? I just want, my budget is only like 50,000 for an artwork, so the gallery won't even like talk to me, the gallerist won't even like consider me or something. But now that is changing a lot, because a lot of galleries are supporting younger artists, emerging practices and talents. They are promoting them on Instagram, if not like proper shows at the gallery. And a lot of that artwork in that range is available through different mediums. Like, for example, at the India Art Fair as well, we make sure while we're curating the fair and entirely, we make sure that there is art that is affordable for people. It's not everyone who can afford like a 1 crore artwork. So there are people who are interested in art, who are keen on collecting art, but the budgets may be different from, let's say, 1,000 other people. So at the fair, we try and make sure that there's something for everyone in a very wide price range, starting from like as low as, I would say, 5,000 rupees for a print by Raja Ravi Verma or from Raja Ravi Verma's press, or by a contemporary artist, to like 50 lakhs, 5 crores, that range
that
is...
helps break that whole exclusivity image also of the art world, that it becomes, that barrier of entry comes down for a younger person to come in and experience the art for themselves. Now the art fair also gets about hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. Yet the conversion of the visitor to a buyer is a small percentage of that. Why do you think that is there, and what does the fair do to tackle it?
With that, I mean, I would firstly say that at any art fair, the percentage of buyers would always be less as compared to the total number of visitors, because visitors includes a lot of people from different categories. They will be collectors, of course. There
Right.
will be curators who are coming there who are not interested in buying, but they're more interested in, let's say, exploring newer voices, newer artists whom they can work with together. There are artists who are visiting the fair to kind of see what is going around in the market. There'll be students, let's say, from art colleges or art schools who are there to kind of experience what it feels like to be in an art market situation and what is happening commercially as well. And then, of course, different other categories of people. So if you see in the whole list of things, list of visitors, collectors are only just a small part of it.
Yeah.
So in terms of proportions, of course, the proportion would remain relatively smaller. But also in the Indian context, what you also have to see is, where are we as a nation, and in terms of the economic situation of the country, and the level of economic inequality. So for the masses in India, what is the basic need for everywhere, for anyone in anywhere in the world? What is the basic need that you first and foremost try to provide yourself? Food,
Yeah.
home, clothing. These are the basic ideas, basic things that you would first want to cover, and then think about anything else. And with the amount of economic inequality that is here in India, the proportion of people who can afford to finance these things for themselves and then go beyond it to, let's say, the social needs, which is then like, let's say, going out to a restaurant, meeting your relatives, visiting a relative, and doing things like that. And then once you're able to also match that, then you go ahead and talk about your prestige needs, which are things like, which are in a way luxuries, which is like investing in art, buying art, collecting art. In a way, it's not a necessity, and thus in the list of needs, in the list of preferences, it comes way further down. So for in a nation where majority of the people are trying to kind of honestly survive, or trying to manage their two levels of needs before reaching that third level, for them, of course, viewing art is an experience in itself. And that's as much as they can possibly afford to be in touch with art. However, of course, there is a very strong booming effect that's happening in the economy. Disposable incomes are rising. There's a lot of interest now amongst the people from the top strata, of course, who have the bandwidth and the wherewithal to start collecting art. They are looking at art as an investment opportunity, as something that they would like to buy for their own tastes and preferences, and moving in their journey of being a collector. A lot of people from like younger generation, the millennials, people who are young professionals, corporate people, they are looking towards art as something that they would definitely want to kind of consider and look at. And I think a major role that played in that direction, one was, of course, what happened in terms of COVID. Everyone was like indoors, they were looking at their own spaces, they felt that, okay, these
Time
spaces
to
need to be
redecorate,
exactly
add
beautified.
something to my space.
That was one. And then secondly, after that, once the economy has recovered, as I said, the disposable incomes are rising, people have a lot of interest. The collector base is expanding. Thus, a lot of people are now keen on going in that direction of starting their own collecting journeys. And also, if you look at it, it's also quite inherent in the Indian psyche, more in the South Asian psyche, correctly, that for us, art is not something that you collect, or creativity is not something that's like separate from your daily life. How? Because we are in touch, whatever level we may be at in terms of that need hierarchy. We are actually taught that as part of management. It's called Maslow's need hierarchy theory.
Yes.
The triangle is still in my head. But
Every time one says that, the triangle suddenly comes in
exactly.
your head.
But basically, coming back to that idea of how we're not devoid of art and creativity, even though we may not be buying art as we understand, is that all of us, in whatever economic strata we may be, we are in touch with our craft communities.
Yes.
In one way or the other. The kind of furniture that we have at our home, it's locally produced, locally designed. The kind of, let's say, equipments that we use in our kitchen, the textiles that we wear,
Right.
all of it is so ingrained. That creative aspect is already so ingrained that you don't feel that you're devoid of it completely. You're not devoid of art or creativity completely. And then also the fact that at times these audiences also, buy art which is much more affordable. Not everyone is going to buy a 1 crore artwork. There are people who buy prints worth 5,000. There are people who buy artworks worth 25,000, 50,000. And that's the start of their journey.
Or the
with
calendars
art.
that we used to get.
Exactly.
People buy a new
Yeah.
calendar every year. They want to see something new every
Exactly.
time.
So that's how the calendar art started, of course.
Yeah.
So there are different ways in which the audiences and people in general interact with art and experience art. And it's not necessary that everyone will do it by the way of coming to an art fair and buying an artwork worth a certain crores. They'll definitely come to an art fair because they're interested in art, and they may experience art, and they may like something and buy something that's worth 20,000 by a young emerging talent, a young emerging artist. And that's their beginning of their journey with art.
Does that qualify for a VIP pass the next time?
Of course. Yes. Come, we're all open. Come and experience art. And that's a whole effort. Like, even as part of a Young Collectors program at the India Art Fair, our whole idea through that program is to make sure that we are inculcating a sense of being one with the art in the younger generation as well. The seasoned collectors, the HNIs, they've already done their part. They're already doing it. They're very well established. It's the younger generation who needs a bit of hand-holding, a bit of guiding, and taking them through this journey of just making them a little more aware, a little more knowledgeable of what is art, what all is actually available. You don't necessarily have to kind of go to a physical gallery space for that matter. There's a lot available online for you to be able to start at least begin your journey in terms of conversations with an artist, in terms of starting to buy like something that's much more affordable for you. You don't have to buy a 1 crore artwork. You buy something that's worth lesser. You buy, like, let's say a painting worth 5,000 every 2 months, and you're building your collection. Eventually down the line, I mean, you may increase your budget depending on how your economic situation is, and that collection may become,
and there is so much noise that surrounds this generation that a bit of hand holding is so necessary, especially because so many distractions are available for us.
Yeah, that hand holding is much important, and that's what we do as part of a Young Collectors program, that we educate these audiences, we put them in touch with younger talent, emerging practices. We give them the opportunity to explore the art world, not just the art market, but the entirety of the art world, at least the Indian ecosystem, and see what works for them. And then those connections happen, and then the conversations begin, and they go on God knows where all.
I think another thing these young collectors get into other Delhi social art parties that happen that entire week of the art fair.
Well, of course, I mean, the art fair makes it like a really, really big event in the city. It brings all of the city together, be it the galleries, art institutions, galleries from across the country also come and hold exhibitions around that time in the city. So yeah, it becomes like a full 1 week of exciting events happening in the city. And if you are around, then you should definitely kind of drop in, see what is going on, go to these parties, attend these events. A lot of these parties actually are hosted by like individual people, just as a collateral to the fair. But that is what kind of livens up the scene, you know. And if you're coming to the fair, then of course, you can't just be at the fair 24/7. You need to kind of rest. You need to kind of relax also, and do something else. And all of these events then kind of just make it really exciting for everyone.
Everybody together.
Exactly.
It's a great time.
It's a wonderful time. And also, what our effort turns out to be that it shouldn't be just like a 4-day thing or just like that week-long thing. So as part of our program throughout the year, we keep doing a lot of things. We keep promoting exhibitions that are happening in galleries and other museums on our platform, on our website, on our social media through IEF Parallel. So if anyone is in some city in the world and they want to see, if there is something happening related to South Asian art in their city, they can just hop onto our website, see what is happening, and then, go and visit those places. We also kind of promote a lot of opportunities for emerging talents and artists and creative practitioners in general through our website's notice board. So throughout the year, if there is any opportunity for, let's say, a job, a grant for an artist, a residency, or an open call that's happening, all of them are also listed together on our website's notice board. It's also promoted on social media. So again, the fair, rather than being just like that 4-day thing, expands into something that is available for people to interact with and engage with throughout the year. And besides these, of course, there are certain other events that we keep doing in multiple cities in the lead up to the fair, be it Bombay, Calcutta, other cities where we kind of work together with different organizations. Like in the previous editions, we'd worked with Madras Gallery Weekend in Chennai, we'd worked with Mumbai Gallery Weekend in Bombay, and the Delhi Art Week in Delhi. So like these major institutions and collectives and groups which kind of then activate those cities and then bring all the audiences together and make the fair much more a part of their life throughout the year, rather than just those
like a huge art celebration.
Exactly, which goes on throughout the year, which should ideally be the case. Yeah.
Now, with this comes a lot of responsibility towards climate, towards the multiple conversations that are happening about sustainability and carbon footprint. And how does the fair incorporate that into its future goals and future plans about being sustainable, about reducing the carbon footprint that it possibly generates?
For this, I'd like to kind of take you a little back to the idea of sustainability. What are we talking about when we're saying that, okay, is something sustainable or not? Because essentially, any sort of activity on this planet, be it through humans, be it through another animal, causes some ecological damage, causes some impact onto the damage. And now if you bring it down to the fair, for example, for something at the fair, we try and see that to be able to be sustainable in a way that we're not impacting the ecology a lot, there will be an impact, of course, for anything, as I said. But that impact needs to be managed. It needs to be controlled as much as you possibly can. And to be able to do that at the fair, we do like we follow a multi-pronged approach. And as part of that, we try and reuse a lot of things, reuse or repurpose a lot of things. So, for example, the fair happens in temporary halls. Now, these temporary tents, these temporary exhibition halls, the material that is used to build them up, it's reused almost every year. And I think its life is almost like 10 to 15 years. I mean, the people in the industry would know better. But basically, it's the same material that is being used to build up the tents every year. We repurpose a lot of booth walls. Every year at the fair, almost, I would say, 80 to 90% of the walls are something that has been used earlier. They're not fresh walls. Because, of course, you can use them multiple times up to a certain point in time, of course. And after that, you need to kind of change them once they have outlived their journey. The flooring that is being used at the fair is also repurposed. It's reused, not repurposed, reused every year to a certain point in time. The carpeting that we use is kind of sold off for further repurposing and reuse by other industries. And also then the flex that we use at the fair, because of course there has to be some sort of plastic that you're using to a certain extent, because that's needed. So the flex that we do, which is basically the artist design flex over the past few editions, that is repurposed into something or the other almost every year as well. So like in the previous edition, these were repurposed into tote bags. I think in one of the previous editions, that flex was donated to one of an NGOs in Delhi who kind of repurposed it into something else for underprivileged school children. I'm not really sure. I'm not able to recollect the exact thing that they repurposed it into, but basically reusing that material rather than disposing it off as a waste product, as a waste item, so that it's not going into the landfill. So that repurposing, reuse happens a lot. We've cut down our plastic use by a lot of extent, and a lot of branding, a lot of signage that you see is printed on PVC-free fabric and not plastic. So that fabric can then again be used for something else possibly. We had like water refilling stations at the fair, so you don't have to buy a bottle of water every time. Once you bought a bottle, or if you brought a bottle from along with you, you can just refill it and have it. You know, that kind of cuts down a lot on the plastic waste and a lot on glass waste and everything. And then we encourage our F&B vendors to use reusable cutlery, be it metal or something, so that it can be washed on site. There are washing machines there, utensil washing machines there, dishwashers, and then it can be reused rather than using wooden sticks or wooden spoons or plastic cutlery and stuff
Right.
like that. So there are multiple things like this that we keep doing every year to make sure that we are, I mean, sustainable is not the right word. I would say that our impact on the ecology or environment is as much reduced as is possible.
So it's a responsible.
It
It's a
is,
responsible
of
response to
course,
everything.
exactly. And
Right.
to the extent that I think in the past two editions, we've been able to divert almost 100% of our waste from landfills.
Oh,
So
that's
basically, in two
commendable.
editions,
Yeah.
in the past two editions of the fair, none of the waste that was generated at the fair went to the landfills. It was either recycled or repurposed or made into compost, depending on, of course, what it was. And that has been a consistent effort, because then that is something that we're able to do to be able to not negatively impact the environment.
Yeah, and that is really commendable. The fact that none of it is going to the landfills.
We hope to continue that, and a lot of that support also comes from the fact that the audiences or the people who are there should be aware of
Yeah.
these little things that they
Yeah.
can do, a little tweak in how they're doing things to just make sure that it's not impacting the environment or the things are not going into waste.
And you can teach the audience so much more
Exactly,
from this.
exactly.
Yeah, it's such a big responsibility, but yet it can slowly be passed on like that.
Yeah.
And now this brings me to the final question of this interview, Saurav. I was recently watching this conversation that was happening at Monaco Art Fair, and in the middle of that conversation, Simone de Pury said that painting has been declared dead. So, do you agree with that? And if it's dead, then what replaces it?
I would say I categorically disagree. Literally. I mean, that may be true for possibly the Monaco art market or for the European art market, but at least in the South Asian arts ecosystem, painting can never be dead in a way, because that's something that you relate to as an art form quite innately and inherently. That's like the basic, that's your tradition, that's your history also. So you may be able to kind of go further beyond it. Your tastes may evolve and develop, as Simon had said in his conversation, that tastes are changing, evolving, preferences are changing and evolving. That will happen for sure. But painting can never be dead, because essentially that is the crux of visual arts.
Yeah.
You may develop it further and go to sculptures, instead of a 2D something on the wall, it's like a 3D sculpture, which you can videos, digital art projections, moving images, animations, installations that are made out of like different materials altogether and are like huge and large in scale. But essentially everything comes down to that, okay, as a person who's collecting art, and if you have a limited amount of space, what can you put up on your walls? It'll be a painting, or let's say a 2D work in other mediums, for example. And also over the past few months, or at least like a year or so, in the Indian ecosystem, art market ecosystem, there's been a bit of a comeback of painting rather. There was digital art that came during COVID and everything, and that became popular. There were textiles and embroidery that have kind of also gained a lot of prominence over the past few years. And after that, now I feel is also the time when people are coming back to painting. That, okay, I've seen this, I've seen that, I've experienced it, I've probably started buying or collecting different mediums also. But okay, above the kitchen wall or on the mantelpiece or somewhere, above my chimney, then what art do I put? It has to be a painting eventually. And it's much more affordable. And is available in like a varying price range, from like very affordable to like super expensive, and you can go crazy with the pricing there. Different aesthetics, as many aesthetics as are possible. If you like something that's traditional, you can go to our craftspeople or artisans, and they'll give you like some of the most beautiful pieces. If you like something very conceptual, abstract, that's also available. So there's a lot of variety within painting that you can never get bored of it at all.
And above all, art will never die.
That, of course, it can never. As I said, we're so innately ingrained with and in touch with and integrated with craft and community and creativity in this country, in this South Asia, that we can never be devoid of art. We can never live without it, of course, for sure.
And I think that's a beautiful note to end this conversation on. I have a final segment wherein we have a rapid fire round.
Oh, nice.
So I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Should I be scared?
No, nothing to worry about. We'll try to keep them very little less controversial.
Sure.
So My first one is investment buying or passion buying?
Passion buying.
Opening nights or private viewings?
Depends on my mood. If I am really interested in, let's say, seeing the artist and the artwork and talking about that, then private viewing. If I'm more interested in, then, let's say, also exploring how the scene is as a large overview, then, of course, opening nights.
Champagne or wine in the art openings?
Wine. That, of course.
Spirituality or science?
A mix of both, if possible.
If you could recommend an art book or a movie, which one would it be?
Oh, that's a little difficult. I would say the basic classic John Berger's Ways of Seeing. Everyone has to
see
read
that.
it.
I agree.
You know,
Emails or meetings?
depends on the person.
Street art or public art?
Public art.
Raza or Hussain?
Raza.
Art Basel or Frieze?
Basel.
Sotheby's or Christie's?
Christie's.
And the last one, what's your favorite look for an opening night?
Something that's a statement. There has to be a statement piece.
Yeah, I agree.
Either jewelry, accessory, or your clothes, or the color. Something has to make a statement that, yes, it is you who's entering and marking the event with your presence. Other than that, it's like, no.
Thank you so much, Saurav. This has been a very interesting, very insightful conversation. And I'm sure any listener, any art enthusiast or artist who listens to it will gain so much from this.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you so much for being a part of the art room.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me over. It's been a lovely conversation, and I'd really like chatting to you and these different perspectives that we've kind of talked about. I hope they'll be useful for someone.
Thank you. Saurav, we would please like you to sign this mug for us.
Oh, thank you so much. I like the mug.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sugandah, for having me. This was lovely.
Thank you.
Wonderful evening. Yes.
Thank you. And this is a small token of thank you from our side.
That's lovely.
I hope you enjoy wearing it. It's by a digital artist called Arjun Mehta.
Nice.
And his label is called Prince AI. If you'd like to open it and try it.
Sure.
please.
Thank you so much. I love scarves in anyway. Wow. This looks beautiful.
I hope you enjoy wearing it.
Yes, lovely. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being a part of the art room,
Thanks a
Saurav.
lot.
This really means a lot to us.
Thank you.